Good afternoon. Sam, are you on?
I am on, yes.
Great, 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 great. So we are delighted to be joined by Sam Mort, who you know. She is the UNICEF Chief of Communications in Afghanistan, and she is, we've asked her to join given the very sad news that came out of Kabul this morning regarding the situation of girls trying to get an education in Afghanistan. Before we go to Sam, I just want to read a statement from the Secretary General, and then we will go to you, Sam. Sorry. The Secretary General deeply regrets today's announcement by the Taliban authorities in Afghanistan that girls' education from the 6th grade has been suspended until further notice. The start of the new year has been anticipated by all students, girls and boys, and parents and families. The de facto authorities' failure to reopen school for girls above the 6th grade, despite repeated commitments, is a profound disappointment and deeply damaging for Afghanistan. The Secretary General says the denial of education not only violates the equal rights of women and girls to education, it also jeopardizes the country's future in view of the tremendous contributions by Afghan women and girls. The Secretary General urges the Taliban de facto authorities to open schools for all students without delay. That statement is being shared with you, and I will now, Sam, give you the floor, and then we'll take some questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Stefan. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to join from Kabul on what has been a very somber day. It's been a deeply frustrating day for girls all over Afghanistan and quite a confusing day for UNICEF and our UNICEF partners, UNESCO, UN Women and WFP. I'd like to start by reading a statement that was issued earlier today by UNICEF Executive Director Catherine Russell, who many of you know was here in Afghanistan just 1 month ago. The heading of her statement reads, "Girls in Afghanistan must go back to school without any further delay." It goes on to say millions of secondary school girls around Afghanistan are hopeful today that they will be able to go back to school and resume their learning. It did not take long for their hopes to be shattered. The de facto authorities' decision to delay the return to school for girls from grade 7 to grade 12 is a major setback for girls and their futures. With this decision, an entire generation of adolescent girls is being denied their right to an education and being robbed of the opportunity to gain the skills they need to build their futures. I urge the de facto authorities to honour their commitment to girls' education without any further delays. I appeal to community leaders in every corner of Afghanistan to support the education of adolescent girls. All children deserve school. This is the surest way to put the country on a path toward peace and prosperity that the people of Afghanistan deserve. That is the end of our Executive Director's statement. To add to that, that there has been a lot of confusion across Afghanistan today. Our monitors have reported that in 17 of the 34 provinces, girls did in fact return to school. Others, however, found their schools shut and others were turned away at the school gates. We cannot conclude anything from these numbers. We do not know what the picture will be tomorrow. We've seen, as many of you, I'm sure, have seen very distressing scenes of deeply disappointed girls all over the country, weeping with frustration. They are rightly deeply concerned about how this decision will impact their futures. Amongst our staff here at UNICEF, there was collective disbelief, sorrow and anxiety. To share one staff member's thoughts, he said, "I have 3 daughters. My elder daughter is in the 10th class and will not be able to go to school anymore, along with hundreds of thousands of other girls. This is a huge shock for all of us. I have no courage to face my daughter and respond to her questions. The world should feel our pain and disappointment." Over.
Thank you very much. Sam will now take some questions. Pam Falk, CBS News.
Thank you very much, Sam.
You might just wait for your mic. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sam, for the briefing. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. My question is, what do you think motivated the reversal, since at first it was announced and then it wasn't? What is your sense from in-country? Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. It's not clear to us. We are very surprised by this decision that came out in the early hours of the morning. There had been every indication to us and to our UN agencies, including strong messages from the de facto authorities, that schools were to reopen today for all children in all provinces at all levels. We are as confused as everyone else. Over.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Yes, Evelyn Leopold. Thank you.
Your microphone, please.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you very much for the brief.
Wait for it to turn on, please. There we go.
Is it on now?
Yes.
Okay. Again, we'll start again. Evelyn Leopold, thank you very much for the briefing. Was the UN, UNICEF, or someone else at the UN notified of the change? Do you expect to speak to the Afghan authorities? Do you expect to get any kind of official notification or meeting on this issue?
Thank you, Evelyn. We were not notified. The message came out in the early hours of this morning. It's what we woke up to. We had planned, as UNICEF, many events all over the country to celebrate the return to school, and obviously those were cancelled. We have got answers from the de facto authorities today to better understand the rationale of the decision, to understand the implications and the next steps. But I think there seems to be disagreement, and that is also playing out across the country when you see the inconsistent picture of some children going to school and others not going to school. So quite a lot of confusion still. Over.
What did you mean by disagreement? Between who and who?
Well, what we mean is that the Ministry of Education, the de facto ministry, has been working with us, with all UN agencies in recent days. There have been consistent messages coming out about schools opening for all children at all levels in all regions, and that didn't happen today. So there seems to be a difference between the Ministry of Education and other parts of the Taliban.
Thank you. Fethi?
Thank you, Steph. Thank you very much for your briefing. I have an observation and a question. My first observation
would you mind taking your mask off when you ask the question? Thank you.
My first observation is that Taliban, since day one, since they came to power, have stressed that they're going to apply the Sharia laws on women and girls. I don't see any change in their stance. I don't know what kind of promises they have submitted in exchange for the release of the funds they had. The other question is, in a practical sense, would it make sense to beam in the education classes through the internet? I mean, I'm not sure of how the network, the infrastructure there, but is there any new technology like the Starlink satellite internet that can beam the classes directly to those girls till Taliban comes back to their senses and respect their agreements? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, like you, we have seen no development in terms of how they wanted to implement Sharia in schools. On your question on the internet infrastructure, it's quite weak across the country, and so I think that's probably more of a long-term solution. But one thing that UNICEF is doing that is working very well is that we are expanding our community-based education classes. These are small classes that take place in villages and rural communities. Follow the Ministry of Education curriculum, and they are particularly effective at encouraging girls to come into school because the girls don't have to travel long distances to public schools. So UNICEF, in conjunction with our partners, is doubling the number of those classes this year in Afghanistan. Over.
Thank you. Go ahead, quick follow-up.
Follow-up very quickly. What about the satellite internet in lieu of the backward infrastructure that might exist now?
I can't comment on the satellite internet network. UNICEF isn't along those programs at the moment.
Thank you. Celia?
Celia de la Varenne, Africa Confidential. How often do you see the Taliban? And also you said that you have good relation with them. Apparently, it does not seem to me that it is so, because they did not even tell you that the girls would be sent back home from school.
Thank you. We have a working relationship with the de facto authorities. As I said, we have been working at the technical level closely in recent months, and we've been in touch with them almost every day in the last couple of weeks to prepare for this back to school moment. That is why I said that we were very surprised by the statement. We understand that the Minister of Education himself was surprised by it as well. And our main concern, of course, is for the girls of Afghanistan whose futures are going to be impacted by this decision.
Thank you. Dulce and then Stefano, and then we'll have to let Sam go.
Thanks very much. So who actually made the announcement and how was it made?
It was made on Twitter. Okay, the name I can follow up and send Steph a message.
We'll share with you as soon as she finds it.
But was it a very top official of the Taliban? I'm just trying to get a sense of the education minister and the rest of the Taliban who's making this announcement. Who's calling the shots?
It was a director in the de facto authority. I'll find a name and WhatsApp it to Steph now.
Okay, thanks. And the education minister, has he gone on Twitter and bemoaned this decision or criticized this decision?
Not that I've seen, no.
All right, last question, Stefano.
Thank you very much, Stefano Vaccara, La Voce in New York. I just asking you what you think, what you expect now the UN and the international community should do. I mean, if the Taliban think they don't pay any consequence for this is a crime against humanity. Should the Secretary General, we just heard the statement, should do something more? What do you expect? Because to be sorry for the girls, it just doesn't help the girls.
Thank you. Our main concern is getting the girls into school in Afghanistan, and to that end, we will be continuing our advocacy at the highest levels and the strongest terms to ensure that every child in Afghanistan enjoys their right to an education.
Great. Sam, thank you very, very much for doing this on very short notice, and we'll continue to support your work and the work of your colleagues. I just want to add, because I think this was raised, some of the questions, and just to give a bit more detail, that we know that Deborah Lyons, the head of the UN mission in Afghanistan, also formally conveyed our concern and our grave concern and disappointment directly to the Taliban. And I know she is not only written, but she is planning to meet with senior Taliban officials tomorrow as soon as practicable. Thank you. Sam, thank you again, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, I'll get you that name.
Okay.